The BBC is facing criticism following calls to diversify the proms. Are they embarrassed by patriotism, or are they keeping with the times, showing diversity? What do you think? Joining us are royal broadcaster and commentator Rafe Heyday-Mankoo and actor and writer Femi Nylander. Both of you, thank you very much, chaps. Great to have you on the show. Rafe, I will start with you. Do you think the proms needs to be more diverse?
Look, there are 84 concerts in the Proms series over 8 weeks. There's plenty of time for it to be diverse. We're talking about the last night of the Proms here, not even the entire concert, just the last half. In the first half, you're going to have opportunities to put other music in there too. This is an attack on British culture. This is my radical idea for those that hate the last night of the Proms. Thinking outside the box here. If you don't like it, don't watch it. Turn the TV off, go out, do something else instead. Put on a record of the Red Army Choir or North Korea's greatest hit and enjoy that, and let the rest of us go about and watch a wonderful British musical tradition that is loved not only in this country, but by people around the world. I'm just so fed up of this constant whinging, this self-hatred, it's self-flagellation. It needs to stop. It's nihilistic and it's corrosive, and it deliberately undermines our culture. And whilst we're having these silly arguments, Russia and China and India are laughing at us. Strong nations are strong because they believe in their past, they take inspiration from the past, and that leads to confidence and being self-assured going forward.
Interesting. Look, Femi, we just saw some images there of someone waving the rainbow flag as opposed to the Union flag at the Proms. It's always full of EU flags as well. No doubt there'll be loads of Ukraine flags. All of that stuff, you know, always a big hoo-ha about whether or not we sing the national anthem, Rule Britannia. It's every single year this stuff raises its head. Where are you on this then? Do you think the Proms needs to be more diverse, or can it just be a celebration of Britain, just patriotism?
So, I mean, it's interesting to hear Rafe talk about whinging. I don't think anyone on the left is actively whinging about this and saying the Proms needs to change. The whinging I've seen is David Frost writing in The Telegraph that in 2014, a Finnish composer was wearing a jacket, a kind of a waistcoat with a Union Jack on, and by 2016, he wasn't wearing the same waistcoat, and that this is a great problem, that someone who isn't even British is deciding to wear a different waistcoat. I mean, let's talk about classical music. We don't have to talk about diversifying the types of music and bringing in different types of music. Let's just say it's just classical music. Rachmaninoff was from Russia, right? You've got all sorts of classical music, which is played in the Proms from all over the European continent and beyond. Classical music doesn't really have anything to do with Britain necessarily, and the Proms, if it's going to say we're just British and we're going to be ultimately patriotic and no one can wave an EU flag because that's free speech, you're not allowed to wave an EU flag or a Prom flag or a Pride flag if you're there, and everyone needs to be British, then why are you playing music by composers like Rachmaninoff and Stanislavski?
OK, there is also usually a bit of a hoo-ha about whether or not we should sing songs like Rule Britannia, etc., isn't there, Rafe? Yeah. Which is, I mean, quite clearly British. What do you make of what Femi just said there?
Well, I'm sorry, Femi, but you're talking absolute nonsense. It's not the whinging is coming from the left. It's people on. I just had a debate a couple of days ago with a diversity and inclusion officer of classical music who was trying to convince me that classical music was steeped in white colonialism and was inherently racist. Who was trying to convince me that Rule Britannia was racist. I don't care what flag you wave. My point is, you have 84 concerts over 8 weeks where a diversity of music is played. If you can't listen, sit still for 45 minutes and let us have some decent tunes which actually introduce classical music to a wider audience. The whole purpose for introducing those in the first place by Sir Henry Wood was to give them more popular appeal.
Femi, just out of interest, look, would you ban the singing of, say, the national anthem or Rule Britannia at an event like the Proms?
Well, I remember when this actually happened. What happened was BBC Proms, a show by an institution, the BBC, decided that it didn't want to sing Rule Britannia. There was no uproar from the left saying cancel Rule Britannia. BBC internally decided. It leaked, and the whole right-wing press went up in arms saying, how dare they take off Rule Britannia? Now, the reason that they decided to take Rule Britannia was partly based on the fact that one of the lyrics in Rule Britannia is Rule Britannia, Britannia rule the waves, Britons never will be slaves. And obviously it was written at a time when Britain was going all over the world on the waves, running, like basically starting off a system of slavery, this, that, and the rest. And it was going on to, or at least was about to go on to run a global slave trade. Now, no one on the left did cause a hoo-ha and kick off and this, that, and the rest. If you want to sing Rule Britannia, sing Rule Britannia, but it was an internal decision by the BBC, and the whinging came from people like Rafe saying, "No, we must sing this song in a show about classical music. Classical music comes from all over the world."
The argument would be that once it's lost, isn't it? So if you don't kick up a fuss about something, then you would lose. Rafe, you're shaking your head. What's going on?
No, that's not the argument. Anybody who puts forward that argument is simply either historically ignorant or delusional or an activist who's just obsessed by race all the time. Rule Britannia was written before we had our main British Empire. It was written in 1740, and it was written about King Alfred the Great from the 9th century, 1,000 years before the great era of imperialism. It's saying Britons never will be slaves because it's an attack on the European tyrants who were conquering other European nations, the Bourbons, the Habsburgs, Tsarist Russia.
Okay.
It had nothing to. Nobody was writing about race or about imperialism.